I respectfully acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, the world's oldest educators and the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast was recorded, Darkinjung country, surrounded by the beautiful Booty National Park, Brisbane Water and Putty Beach. The land we learn, teach, play and walk upon always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Teaching is one of the most rewarding vocations, yet great teachers are burning out and leaving the classroom in record numbers. Welcome to the PDHPE and CAFS Podcast with your host, Kel Bell. This podcast empowers busy New South Wales teachers of PDHPE, CAFS and HMS to teach with confidence, clarity and ease. I understand the challenges of teaching because I've lived them. With more than 2 decades in education, I've journeyed from classroom teacher to becoming New South Wales' trusted voice in PDHPE, community and family studies and health and movement science. Together with leading experts and teachers just like you, we're here to help you reclaim your afternoons, weekends and holidays through practical resources, supportive memberships and powerful professional learning. Ready to reclaim your time? Access your classroom-ready PDHPE, CAFS and HMS tools at thelearnnet.com/tools. So grab a cup of tea or coffee and let's chat about creating impact in your classroom without burning out in the process. Hello, everyone. It is so great to be with you here again on the PDHPE and CAFS podcast. We are joined by Kate McGill for our second chat together. And we're very lucky to have our chat with Kate McGill a little bit differently to our previous conversation around body image. We are going to be chatting about nutrition and food, which I think obviously goes hand in hand with body image, but I think it's an important conversation for us to have as primary teachers and also high school PE teachers. Huge welcome back, Kate.
Yeah, thanks, Kel. Great to be here again.
Yes, and if teachers didn't listen to our very first podcast episode, can you give us like a little intro as to who you are, what you do in your work with Firefly, your company?
Yeah, for sure. So my name's Kate McGill. I'm an accredited practicing dietitian and body image coach, and I do lots of different things. So I have a private practice where I work with teenagers and adults experiencing disordered eating and eating disorders, sadly on the rise in Australia. I also do consulting with teachers and professional bodies for eating disorder safe nutrition education materials. I do some presenting and some clinical work with the Butterfly Foundation as well, which I love. I think, is that what I do? I think that's what I do professionally, Kel. I'm also a mum. I have 2 teenagers. I have a fur baby who keeps me very busy as well. So yeah, lots of things on in.
Yeah. Keeping very busy, no doubt.
Very busy, yes.
Now, Kate, I'm going to say out loud, like I love food.
Yeah.
Food has 2 functions for me.
Yes.
Food nourishes my body and keeps me going, and it enables me to do my everyday thing, but also to train and to keep myself fit and, healthy, playing sport, all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
But I also really enjoy food. Like I love textures. I love the enjoyment of a meal. So I think like it's really interesting to have this conversation about food and nutrition. But like, how do you see everything? Like you've seen a lot in your time, in your practice and in your work.
Yeah.
Where do we even start with food and nutrition?
Yeah, so big, isn't it? I think, we all come, wherever we happen to be in the world, we all come with a lot of nutrition information. I think it's one of the things that is really confusing for people as well, like especially the conversations around healthy eating. What is healthy eating? Do I eat that? Do I avoid it? I don't know if I should or I shouldn't. I'm with you these days, Kel, that food is, so many things. Food is function, it's fuel, it's fun, it's love, it's celebration. I had a very rocky relationship with food growing up myself, so I spent a lot of time in that sort of disordered eating space of dieting and, I had a very different idea about food and would have spoken about it very differently then. But for me these days in the work that I do, when I think about nourishing our bodies, yes, food is one of the ways we do that, but there are so many other things that we need to do or that we can do that nourish us in lots of different ways.
Yeah. Look, I think it depends what culture you've like, you said where you're from. Like, it depends on your culture
Yeah.
and your own experience in your family. Look, I think the big message is that food always brings people together.
Right.
People go out for dinner, or you have a family barbecue or a family meal, or coffee, whatever it is. It enables you to actually enjoy that moment. It's obviously, rich in the history of the world and our evolution that it brings us together. And it's probably, I think sometimes maybe the only moments that a lot of families get to have is
Absolutely.
like, some people eat on the run, and look, I've been there and done that. I'm not
Sure.
gonna say that
Yeah.
I don't. But
Sure.
it's, having a meal together is just so nice. Like, it's such a great I don't know, just such a great moment to have, with family and friends.
Absolutely. And I think what you speak to there, Kel, is that, yes, we sit down, we have, dinner, for example, if we're having a family dinner, yes, it nourishes and fuels our body, but it also nourishes and fuels our life and those
Mm.
connection pieces and, that sense of worth and who I am. Like, that again, if we zoom out onto that bigger sort of body image conversation as well, family dinners are one example of how food and nutrition and eating combined can be really protective for people in a lot of different
Mm.
ways.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And look, we have very busy lives. Everyone
yeah,
is busy.
of
I know
course.
for us, our girls are 16 and 13 this year. Despite all, Cass, our eldest, is working. See, our youngest does 2 sports. They're busy,
Yeah.
but we make sure, like, if we're home together, we're gonna sit down. We're gonna have our together no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't have to be every meal,
No.
Kel, if we can have one family meal a week,
Yeah.
double thumbs up. Let's start small and build if we can. We've all got these competing schedules, so of course, it makes sense that we do sometimes have to eat on the run and do various things like that, but baby steps. I guess that's, take that how with a grain of salt, however you will, but taking baby steps towards some of these kind of what does help, what does support, versus maybe what's less helpful for our, students, our own children to kind of be hearing in that space as well.
Yeah. So do you think that's kind of where the conversation starts with kids at school, like even primary school age kids? Like, you start with what is food, like the
Mm.
function of food, and then what's the function of meals, and then nutrition. Is that how you kind of go down that path with
Yeah.
young people?
Yeah, so I think, something really important to remember is the age appropriateness. And I know your community will know just how important it is to be sort of channeling the right type of education, level of education to the right person. So if we're thinking about our younger years, when we're talking about nutrition education, what is food? All the different types of food, where food comes from, the farm to plate kind of analogy, the process of how that might happen, what food does in our body. There's some elements of nutrition education that are really valuable and really helpful for everybody to know. I
Yeah.
think what I notice gets a bit clouded is when we start channeling nutrition down particular holes. And one really classic example of this is like our traffic light food system, right? Really commonly used in schools, as school canteens as well. We've got our red
Yeah.
food, avoid our orange foods, sometimes in our green foods, we're good to go. And what happens when we kind of oversimplify nutrition in those ways is that we start to kind of layer on some morality and some beliefs and some values around particular foods, because classically you might think about something like chocolate or chips being in the red category, right? And sure, we don't want our young people to be only eating those foods, absolutely. But when we start to layer on that morality and language around it, if it's good, if it's bad, we avoid it, don't touch it, we start to, add inject a whole lot of shame into eating those foods. And we know that shame is a terrible seasoning for what we're eating.
Yeah. So what would a better way, like, we've been told and we've been taught and we've been doing that sort of thing for years.
Yeah.
What would a better way to kind of teach kids, like, these are some foods that you may not eat all the time or you shouldn't eat all the time? Like, how do
Yeah.
you do it?
So personally, what I do with my own children, if I'm doing, supporting the creation of resources for schools, is these are, let's say we're talking about macronutrients. No problem to teach about what a macronutrient is, right? A nutrient, whether it's carbohydrate or protein or fat. Alcohol is our fourth macronutrient, but we're, probably not going to be talking too much about that with our young people. But, what do the carbohydrates do in our body? Right. And if we look at our Australian Guide to Healthy Eating, I've got it pinned up here on my my wall. That's why I look to the side. Carbohydrates are these foods and they're also those foods. So, just really teaching about those specific groups, what they do. If we're staying on the carbohydrate kind of bandwagon for a moment, things like, what do carbohydrates do in our body? We've got our quick carbohydrates. It might be great if we're going for a run or we've got a big day ahead of us. And then we've got our sort of longer, slower burning carbohydrates that are important to keep our brain fueled, our muscle fueled. So we can still talk about the foods that we want to add in, the foods that our body thrives on, maybe our core foods. But we just want to be really mindful about that, the moralistic language, that's bad, avoid that, we don't want to have that. Instead, using words such as, we want to be mindful or thoughtful around, am I giving my body all the different things that it needs?
So, like, I'm thinking of like the traffic light situation or like a matching activity that we might have seen or done
Yep.
for the last 15 years, maybe. Like, okay, if I was a primary school teacher, I might laminate. I'm not a primary school teacher, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
might laminate a whole heap of foods and the kids have to go, that's a sometimes food, that's a whatever food. Like, is there a better way to do that? Like, we could obviously go, well, that belongs to the carbohydrates,
Yep. Yep.
the, whatever,
Yep.
proteins,
Yep.
fats.
Yep.
But then where's the education piece to kind of go, well, yeah, carbohydrates in that spectrum, like there's, potatoes, rice, pasta, bread, but there's
Yep.
also cakes, lollies,
Yep.
muffins,
Yeah.
whatever else. How would we educate the young kids? Like, that one's a sometimes one, that one's, good fuel. How does
Yeah.
that work?
Yeah, for sure. So it might surprise you, Kel. I don't even talk about sometimes foods in my own home. And
We probably wouldn't use that language, would we? Like,
yeah, because again, like it adds another element to it.
yeah,
What does sometimes even mean, as an
yeah,
example? What I might do for the education piece there is, if we had a look at that Australian Guide to Healthy Eating circle, which, a lot of your audience will be familiar with, and we have a look at that going, all right, well, what could I have out of that would really support my body? Or it could be an activity like, okay, I've got, a netball training session or a soccer training session on this afternoon. What foods are going to fuel my body in a way that's going to give me energy and strength and endurance? I guess ultimately, we want to help our young people, and it might get a bit tricky in the education space versus kind of the home space of how can they have a nourishing and peaceful relationship with all foods. That no, we don't only want to be eating chocolates, chips, cakes, pastries. Sure, of course. But when we teach, carbohydrates do this and proteins do that and, fats do this, it's not saying only eat those things. It's saying,
yeah,
do we have this lovely variety? It's kind of the how that we eat, not just what we're eating, but how are we eating? Are we making sure we do get lots of beautiful colour? And we're looking at that Australian Guide to Healthy Eating. Am I drawing on all the different food groups?
yeah.
Things like that to build a plate that would nourish me in different ways.
Yeah, and I do like the, healthy, the guide to healthy eating is so
Mm.
much better than the bloody pyramid. Like, that was
Yes.
disaster to start with.
Yes, that's right. The pyramid. The Australian Guide to Healthy Eating is the circle,
Yeah,
and then I'm just blanking on the term. The guidelines are the five different points.
Yeah.
About, including a wide variety. There is a little bit of problematic language still in there from my lens. But yes, so much better and so much more evolved than it has been,
Yeah.
definitely.
And look, there's always room for improvement.
Of
Like,
course.
I think I
Yeah.
was saying before, like, where do the herbs fit in? Where
That's
does
right.
all these other
Yeah.
kind of foods that we get to enjoy and have a place
Absolutely.
in our bodies and
Yeah. Yeah.
look,
So, as one of those elements, like if we're looking at that Australian Guide to Healthy Eating, or something I'll often talk about is like, what's missing there? Like you
yeah,
say, well, the herbs are missing, the spices are missing. What about, again, thinking about what else does food give us? Celebration. Birthday cake is such a great example. It's
yeah,
really only for celebration, Yes, it provides energy,
yeah,
but it's okay. And we don't want
yeah.
to demonize any of those
Yeah.
experiences.
Look, I think teachers will understand the idea that food has different functions. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
food is fuel, and I think even for me, someone who has always, I would say, had a really good relationship with food.
Mm, mm,
I like to eat a variety of foods. I always
mm,
have, probably
mm,
more on the the typical healthy side of things.
mm.
Because,
Yeah.
you kind of go to that, oh, that's what I was taught, shouldn't put that in my body. But I know what happens when I do put that in my body. Like I don't
Right.
have the energy. I'm slow. I'm sluggish.
Right.
I
Right.
think just that reframing of what does
Right.
it actually do for my body, and it
Mm,
might be different. Like for me, I'm, currently training for a marathon, and there are some things that I've had to eat. I'm like, I don't usually eat this stuff. Like I don't love it, what it does to my body, but I know if I don't have it, it's not going to give me the energy that I need to actually run for kilometers and kilometers. It has a
right.
function.
It
Like,
has a function. It has
yeah,
a function, and it's such a great point, to think about it in that way, that there is,
mm,
even if, yes, of course, we want our young people to be including, again, fruit and veggies and whole grains, and yes, of course, all of those things are true. It's an element of something called intuitive eating. I won't go into too much detail about intuitive eating now, but is how food makes us feel.
yeah,
That if I'm only eating what might have been traditionally called, and still are called, discretionary food items, my body's not going to feel great.
yeah,
I'm not going to have a lot of energy. I will, I'll get a big spike in energy, and then that's going to crash. I might not have, I might not be pooping well. Like all of those kind of elements absolutely are great to talk about.
mm,
How does food make us feel? There can be some challenges there for our neurodivergent students, and young people as well. But even just that conversation of like, what do these different foods allow us to do? How can I support my body in different ways? Because body kind, Butterfly Foundation talk about being body kind, and they talk about that in regards to how we nurture our bodies, nourish our bodies, and move our bodies. That
mm,
sometimes, the veggies are the most supportive choice, and sometimes it's having ice cream with my family on holidays.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's, there's no big polars, this is good and this is bad. It's like everything can fit. And how is it going to support me to live my life, do what I need to do, fuel for the ways that I need to fuel?
Yeah. And even like there's foods that, this is a whole nother conversation, is
Yeah,
different foods make people feel very differently. Like if I
absolutely.
look at the protein and, all of those milk products, for me,
Mm,
I'm not lactose free, but
mm, mm,
dairy makes me feel like absolute crap.
yeah.
So
Yep.
I avoid it completely. Like I can't have that.
Yeah.
Am
Yep.
I missing out? Well, yes, but also I need to look at other ways to supplement my body to replace that.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to keep
Absolutely.
eating it if
Right.
it makes me feel like crap.
Of course you're not. I hope, very much hope you don't keep eating it if it makes you feel awful. But again, what a great seed plant there of, well, how else can I get those nutrients in that maybe dairy would have been giving me?
Yeah.
But you're right. We could go down all sorts of different rabbit holes with that.
Yeah. So when you
Mm.
have conversations with students
Mm.
around food and nutrition,
Yeah.
how do you frame it so they're not like confused by what, just the term healthy eating? Like how do they know, or is that the best term to use? What should teachers
Yeah.
use?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? And again, I personally, in my own home, in the work that I do, don't really talk about healthy eating. If I do, Kel, it's really important that we frame what health means.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
health is complex,
Yeah.
it's dynamic, it's different for you and me and our students. So if I talk about healthy eating, if I do, I would absolutely frame that in a way of what's our goal here? Like, what is
Yeah.
the purpose? My daughter's a very good netball player. And so, talking about fueling with her, not getting too sort of intense on what she needs to have, but also to actually fuel her adequately
Yeah.
for a 6-hour netball tournament is, it's a challenge. So how do we, bring that conversation in of like, we need to eat these foods that, we might not want to be eating on a typical weekday when we're not doing a 6-hour netball tournament to fuel our body, to give us the energy that
Right.
it needs for our muscles to jump and, get those rebounds and all the different things.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've quite answered your question there, but something to think about again is all the things that food and nutrition gives us, rather than what it takes away. It has that real strengths-based
Mhm.
approach
Yeah.
of there's nothing bad, but if we want this, outcome, we might want to focus on those particular
Yeah.
foods.
Yeah, that's a good frame, and I think it's just re-educating people.
Yeah,
We've
yeah,
been taught this way for such a
we
long time.
yeah,
The language is important, as we've spoken about.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
just that reframing for people so they know, okay, maybe it's the way I'm saying things, and
yeah,
reminding the kids that every single human body is very
yeah,
different. Like my daughter who, she has so much energy. She burns through food very, very quickly.
yeah, yep,
She, when she goes to cheerleading in the afternoon, she'll say, "Oh, might just get a packet of chips." I'm like, "No, Lex, that's not going to sustain you for the next 2 hours that you have of cheerleading." Like, you need to think about, and I always use the analogy of, burning on a fire. Like, those big
yeah,
logs are going to be those things that are going to kind of sustain you for the next couple of hours. The little twigs, they're like the chips that you're going to have, or they're the
yeah,
lollies. No wonder why you feel like crap at the end of cheerleading when you
right,
haven't eaten enough. And look, she's 12.
yep,
She's
yep,
she's still like, I think she's still young, but also like she wants to be older than what she is. But I
yeah,
still need to educate her. Like, Lex,
of
there's some
course.
things that that you have to do differently when you're preparing for different things.
Right.
Um,
And, I think in that same breath, something super helpful is, okay, yeah, the chips are there. They might not give you what you need for your
yeah,
cheerleading practice. If we had a think about that, maybe this is from a teaching lens, that Australian Guide to Healthy Eating, that circle, like what is it that would really fuel my body?
yeah,
Right,
yeah,
what can I add? Or if I am going to have the chips, we don't want to demonize the chips. What can I add to it? Is there something, one of those core foods that might be really helpful and supportive for my body to give it what it needs to function in
mm,
the ways that it
yeah,
does. Yeah. And
and
it's repeated
yeah,
conversations, right? It's not a one-off.
yeah, yeah,
It's again over and over again, just the way we're speaking about it, whether this is from a teaching or parenting lens, being mindful of that language, how we're talking about it, the repeated messages, because that is really what sticks,
yeah.
really what sticks.
Yeah, and reminding Lexi again, oh, when you didn't feel that good at netball, and look, it comes back to me. Like I try to give our girls responsibility, but
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like, okay, Kel, look, they're 12 and 15. Like,
Yeah. Yep.
you are still the parent. You need to guide
Absolutely.
and show and provide, and maybe just prepare it, or say, hey, Lex, okay, what are we going to have for breakfast this morning before netball? Because you're going to play nearly a whole game of centre.
Yep.
And, the first week that she played, she wasn't used to it because she hasn't played netball for a long time. I'm like, okay, Kel, you have to be the parent. You have to actually say, all right, Lex, we're doing this.
Yeah.
Here's a couple of choices. What do you want
Beautiful.
to eat? It's
Beautiful.
going to
Here's
help you.
Yeah, so knowing what your parent had on there, and then these are your options, what would you like to have? That's something called the division of responsibility, that it's the parent's job to decide what when and where, and
Mm.
it's the child's job to decide if and how much. And
Yeah,
of
cool.
course, our young people still need some guidance from family. Of course they do, but can we give a bit of choice? Can we role model what a nourishing relationship with food looks like? That everything's on the table. You know, Kel, you were saying that you're a foodie and you love food and the sensory element and the textures, and talking about that with young people, whether it's students or our own children, again, just being food positive in that regard. It's not saying that, you only live on what we might have called discretionary items, but we include them. Of course, there's
Mm.
not that we don't need to fear them. There's nothing wrong with them. And I think that's part of the problem with the messaging around, those traffic light foods or healthy and unhealthy foods is that it takes away that beautiful nuance of the other elements outside of fueling our bodies,
Mhm.
food and eating gives us.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, look, like I said before, we're a complex, like, unique human
Yeah,
being,
yeah,
and there's always gonna be flow-on effects of what
yeah,
we say to students, what we say to even our own children, their own perception of food, and kids are
yeah.
funny. Some kids just don't love certain foods.
Of
It's just, I
course.
think, variety and,
Yeah,
yeah, teaching our kids that, food is there, for fuel, but it also has lots of purposes.
totally, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Celebrations,
Absolutely.
always.
Yeah. All the things, Kel, all the things. And, we think about we do in this country, around the world, we do celebrate with food. It is
Yes.
something that we do. And I think when you have a peaceful and nourishing relationship with food, you had a big smile on your face just then, that's a positive thing. But unfortunately, what we see when this sort of, this might take a different turn in that more disordered eating or eating disorder space is that people become fearful of
Yeah.
foods, and whether that may be what we would consider a healthy or an unhealthy food. Culturally, food becomes a weapon. It doesn't
Mm.
become a tool to support our health anymore. It becomes a weapon. And that's no one individual factor, but certainly the way that we teach and talk about food at school can have, beautiful positive impacts on young people.
Yeah. So
Mm.
if you were in a classroom and you had a group of kids who, um, you might notice some of those conversations pop up.
Yeah.
You might have some boys or girls who you kind of like, you're probably thinking, oh, this doesn't sound like it's a positive interaction with food. What are some things
Mhm.
that you would suggest for teachers to kind of say or do or spark conversation with kids like that?
Yeah, great question. So if I'm noticing there's some comments that are popping up that I'm feeling, are less than helpful, first of all, please follow your gut there. Follow the intuition of, is this safe for everybody absorbing the message? We don't ever have to challenge or argue, of course, or, coerce, nothing like that. But to, perhaps, let's say an example of you hear a young person saying, well, that's a bad food or that's an unhealthy food and you shouldn't be eating it. Perhaps you could respond with something like, well, there are no good or bad foods. Different foods have different functions. Some foods help us play sport. Some foods help our body repair. Some foods help our body grow. Some foods are just for fun. So, again, we don't have to, I guess, directly argue with anyone, but we can add in this other more what sort of like I like to call gentle nutrition element of, what else? Like if that's very black and white and rigid, what could I add in that sort of maybe neutralizes that a little bit? Or, yeah, I don't know if that's helpful, Kel.
No, that's good. I think it's just that awareness and, I think teachers, you hear so much,
Yeah,
and I think a lot of people are afraid to have a conversation if, like, they haven't heard it directly.
yeah, for sure.
I would always encourage our teachers, if you see or if you observe something that, I think like you said, it doesn't sit well with you, you're like, I'm not sure."
Yeah,
Go with your gut instinct, like, I have a feeling this might not be a positive, experience for those students or those young people, and then
Yeah.
have a conversation. Like there's no secrets. And, a lot of teachers would know, like you hear things and you're like, should I address it? And I would. Like
Yeah.
you are the educator, you are guiding your students. Even if you hear a conversation that might not have been something that you wanted to hear, I think we have an obligation to raise awareness and have a conversation as a class.
Absolutely.
Getting
Absolutely.
outside of our 4 walls and bringing our content to life and having that conversation about real life issues that our kids are experiencing,
Yeah. Yeah.
is part of our role, I think.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly with that, and opening up the conversation more generally,
Yeah,
maybe for some of those vulnerable young people,
yeah,
perhaps if there's some very kind of rigid or disordered thinking or discussion, that's a bit of a flag in and of
yeah,
itself. But
exactly.
that, to go back to that sort of other point about the young person has a role with nutrition, but really, depending on their age, it's predominantly their parents, their families, their
Mm,
carers. And so again, when we are sort of honing in on these are the bad foods, but someone else is actually providing those foods, that young person's in a very,
mm,
tricky place. So
yeah,
yes, we want to educate. Yes, we want to upskill. Yes, we want to arm our young people with nutrition knowledge. What nutrition gives us rather than what it takes away, but definitely lovingly, gently, but firmly calling that out, can be really, really helpful.
mm, yeah.
Mm.
So, as a result of like nutrition food, where are some resources that teachers might like to go to for some more information or either education or resources on food, nutrition that you've loved, that you
Yeah.
like the language of?
Yeah. Well, Butterfly Foundation actually has some beautiful resources on nutrition and food, and talking about food from a really kind of 30,000 foot lens, if you like. Something that can be really helpful for teachers is focusing in not just on the what we're eating, but also the how. So that comes from
Interesting.
a model called RAVES, which was developed by an Australian dietitian, Shane Jeffrey. And I'm happy to send through a bit of a sort of cheat sheet on RAVES. But again, including that in our learning and our teaching about food. Am I eating regularly through the day? Am I eating adequately? I'm not having big gaps in my eating, or just little tiny nibbles when my body actually needs a little bit more fuel. Am I eating a variety of different foods? Where am I getting all these different things from? So thinking about the how we're eating, check out the Butterfly Foundation website. There's some great resources there. And if you want some more individual or personalised support, feel free to reach out, and I'll be more than happy to assist.
Thank you. Now, a question for you, which
Mm.
is a bit different to what you answered last time. Can
Hmm.
you give us some examples of foods that you love to nourish your body with?
Oh, foods that I love to nourish my body with. So beautiful. I get very excited. So this for me changes probably day to day. When I think about nourishing my body, and I am a neurodivergent human who has sometimes I have challenges hearing exactly what my body needs or when. But when I think about nourishing my body, I love to think about balance. And that's not from like a diet culture balance lens. That's do I have some carbohydrate here on this plate? Do I have some protein on this plate? Do I have some color and a source of fat? So a big thing at the moment for me is I'm loving bagels with avocado and tomato and everything bagel seasoning. I'm very big into at the moment, and mandarins.
Oh,
That's kind
nice.
of my every morning I get really excited about eating that when I wake up. I'm a bit of a creature of habit. So I love, I always got some boiled eggs in the fridge. What else have we got? Oh, nuts and seeds are big in my house. I'm a huge chocolate fan, of course. Make sure I have that in the house at all times. I could go on and on and on,
Yeah.
but they'd be the big ones at the moment, Kel. How about you? What
Oh,
are you nourishing your body with?
I you were talking about lots of, carbs, fats, everything. I really love poke bowls. I
Yum,
love how that you can just have maybe a small bit of rice at the bottom, some
yep,
brown rice,
yum,
or quinoa, some greens,
yep,
cucumber, broccoli, salmon, chicken.
beautiful.
You can top it with whatever you want then. Like you can put some, sesame seeds or chia seeds or chili flakes. I love chili, so that's
Yeah,
it always has to appear somehow. Even put, avocado and chili flakes on sourdough is delicious.
delicious, Kel.
Some good fats with some mayo or,
Mhm.
something on top, just something that's, really no, I love poke bowls. They're just so nourishing and so comforting. You can just put anything in them. Like I just love that idea. You could do a
Absolutely.
Mexican poke bowl. You could do a
Brilliant.
whatever Asian poke bowl.
Brilliant.
Just so
And
good.
it's
Yeah,
fun, it's
it's fun.
colourful,
Yeah.
sometimes easy depending on the
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
Yeah,
And we
beautiful.
often do them with our girls because, they're very good eaters, which is nice. Like they will eat lots of variety. They like to experiment, lots of, spices, and we're very lucky that they will eat
Right.
pretty much everything. So we're like, okay, here's it all on the plate. Then you can make your own poke bowl as well. You can be the
Beautiful.
master of your destination and put whatever you want. I'm like, hey, you guys haven't got enough green in that poke bowl.
Right,
Add choose the
right.
green, like
Yep.
here are 3 examples of green.
Yeah,
Add
what
something.
would you like? Yeah, it's your choice. Here are the options. What would you like?
Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, that's my, go-to, but, yeah, look, I love food. It's great, it's nourishing, it's there for
Mm,
celebration and
yeah,
special occasions, but also just, yeah, I look forward to food. I always
brilliant.
have. So, look, hopefully, we can educate, more young people to enjoy food for what it is and for the purpose it provides.
Yeah,
Um so they have
like,
that really nice kind of relationship with food
absolutely.
'cause it's
Yeah,
great. Like, it's so
yeah,
good that we get to eat such a variety and,
yeah, yeah.
um, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, taking that shame, that
Yeah,
fear-mongering that,
yeah,
we're all exposed to taking off that off the plate.
yeah,
And again, like, how do I nourish, not, how do I have to control? I love that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Great advice. Look, thank you so much again, Kate. We're very lucky to have you back, and a huge thank you for joining us at the K to 10 PDHP Forum
that's my
last month. We're very lucky to have you in person, but
pleasure.
it's a huge pleasure to be, around you and your love
Mm.
for supporting young people. So thanks so much.
Thanks for having us, Kel, and, being part of the solution. It's a very big problem that we're facing at the moment with young people and their relationship with food and body. So thank you so much for prioritising this and putting it forward to your beautiful community.
Pleasure. Thank you. This episode was brought to you by the K-6 Primary and 7 to 10 PDHP memberships, the CAFS Collective, and the Health and Movement Science membership. Our community is designed to support and empower busy teachers like you. Explore them along with a suite of helpful teaching tools at thelearnnet.com. If you've loved today's episode, don't keep it to yourself. Share with a colleague, take a screenshot, and tag me on Instagram at kellybell.coach. I love seeing what resonates with you. Make sure you subscribe to Apple Podcasts or Spotify to stay connected. And if you took even one thing away from today's chat, I'd be so grateful if you could please leave us a review. See you next week. Here's to finally reclaiming your time as a busy New South Wales teacher.